welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about probability and statistics. Specifically, we're going to be talking about constructing a histogram. So a few things that we need to know about histograms going in. Histogram is a type of frequency graph, so it measures how frequent something happens. The categories on the x-axis are numerical and equal, so they have to be numbers. So they can't be things like red, blue, green, or cows, dogs, cats. They have to have numbers, and they have to be equal. That's key. The next thing we need to remember is that the height of each bar on a histogram is determined by the frequency of that interval. That means the bar is going to represent how many times something happens. So if something happens 6 times within that frequency, then the bar would be up to 6. And there is no space between the bars. And when should we use a histogram to display this data? Well, we're going to use a histogram only when we want to show how often something happens. So you can really only use a histogram to measure the frequency or how often something happens. Now let's take a look at example A. Here we are at example A, and it says this is a non-example of a histogram. It does not have equal and or consecutive intervals. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. We're going to try and find the mistake, and then we're going to go about fixing the mistake. So if I'm looking at my frequency along the left-hand side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that appears fine. So now we need to go along the bottom and see what our mistake is. So our first category is 1 to 3, then we've got 3 to 6, 6 to 9, and 9 to 12. So the mistake here is that 2 intervals have the same number in them. So 1 and 3 has 3 in it, but 3 and 6 also has 3 in it. So we can't really determine where the 3's lie. So the mistake in this histogram is that the intervals along the x-axis overlap. So now that we know they overlap, we need to figure out how to fix that. Now, the way that we're going to fix this is we need to figure out how many bars we have. So in this case, we have 4 bars, and we need to figure out how much our frequency goes between 1 and 12. So how many numbers are between 1 and 12? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So since there are 12 numbers between all of the frequency, and we want to break them into 4 different bars, we're going to take the 12 numbers we have, divide by the 4 categories that we want, and 12 divided by 4 is 3. So each section should have 3 numbers in it. So let's make that happen. So 1, 2, 3 for the first category, 4, 5, 6 for the second category, 7, 8, 9 for the third category, and 10, 11, 12 for the last category. So there you can see we fixed our histogram. It had a mistake. They were overlapping, but we fixed it, and now there are no overlaps, and it is still now a histogram. Now let's take a look at example B. So here we are in example B. It says find the mistake because, again, this is a non-example of a histogram. It does not have equal and or consecutive intervals. So we've got minutes spent on a math test. Along the left-hand side, our frequency is fine, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But along the bottom, we've got a problem. We've got to figure out what it is. So our first one is 1 to 4, 5 to 8. Then it should be 9. Oh, no. Notice that between 8 and 13, there are no numbers there. They're not listed. So we have a problem. We need to figure out what happened between 8 and 13, and finally 17 and 20. So the mistake in this histogram is that there is a gap between the numbers 8 and 13. So now we need to go in and fix that. Now we've got 20 numbers here, 1 to 20. So, and we're needing to break them into 4 bars like we have there. So 20 divided by 4 will tell us how to equal out our bars. So 20 divided by 4 is 5. So each category has to have 5 numbers in it. So 1 to 5 for the first category, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 for the second category, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 for the next category, and then 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20 to the final category. Now notice, if you just try and do subtraction to figure out how many numbers are between, like if you did 20 minus 16, you would get 4. That is not the case. There are not 4 numbers there. 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20 are all within that category. So if that's the case, then you know there are 5 numbers. So be very careful that you don't just do subtraction to try and figure out how many numbers are in each category. You need to make sure that you are counting. Now let's see you try one on your own. Here we are at practice number 1, and it says this is a non-example of a histogram. It does not have equal and or consecutive intervals. So you're going to try this one on your own. We already know that there's a mistake, and we know the mistake is along the bottom. That's where the boxes are empty. So now you're going to try this one on your own and see if you can fix the intervals to make it a proper histogram. If the video doesn't pause for you, you want to go ahead and pause the video now, try it on your own, and then press play again to see if you are right. How did you do? Hopefully you selected the correct answer. If not, hopefully you got the answer that I got. If you didn't, fix your paper so that it looks like mine. Also make sure that you record what the mistake in this histogram is. So the intervals are not equal because the 0 to 50 is much larger than the other categories. The first interval has more than the others, so you had to rebalance it. The problem with that is this also starts at 0, and weight of dogs in a shelter, there's not going to be a dog that weighs 0 pounds. So in order to even out all the numbers, you had to start at 1, because there are no dogs in the shelter that are going to weigh 0 pounds. Hopefully you got this correct, and let's move on to the next practice problem. Here we are at practice problem number 2, and it says find this mistake. This is a non-example of a histogram. It does not have equal and or consecutive intervals. So taking a look at our graph, again, we've got some mistake down across the bottom. We need to figure out what is going on with our intervals. And again, I want you to remember back from the beginning, be very careful to count the numbers, not just do subtraction. So I want you to try this one on your own, do the best that you can. Either the video will pause on itself, but if it doesn't, go ahead and press pause and then press play again to see if you are right. How did you do? Hopefully you got the same answers that I got. Notice that the intervals are not equal. The first interval has 11 numbers instead of 10 because it starts with 0. So the simple fix for this is to rather start with 0, start with 1, because again, the graph is about time spent reading for fun. And if you went for 0 minutes, that wouldn't be on this graph. So now let's take a look at example C. Here we are at example C, and it tells us to create a histogram using the data that they've given us displaying the high temperatures in October. So as you can see, we've got a range of around 49 degrees going all the way up to 80 degrees. So we need to figure out what intervals we're going to use on the x-axis. So since we know that our numbers are ranging between 80 and 49, and we have 5 different columns, we have to figure out what we're going to break that into. In order to figure that out, we're going to take the range of our data, so that's the largest number, minus the smallest number, so in this case we're going to do 80 minus 49. When we do that, we end up with 31. So now we know the range that we need to fill is 31. However, we need to take a look at the number of columns in our graph, and in this case we have 5 columns, so we're going to take our 31 and divide it by the 5 columns, which is going to give us 6.2. But we don't want to have decimal numbers, especially since we don't have any decimals in our temperatures. So we're going to need to make sure that we pick a number that's larger than 6.2 in order to cover all of those. So we're going to have each of our intervals go up by 7. So we don't want to go by 6s, because if we go by 6s, we're not going to have enough space to get all of our numbers in, since we have 6.2 as our average. So we need to bump it up to 7. So our first column is going to start at 49, that's our lowest number, and we're going to add 7 because that's how much we want in each column. So 49 plus 7 is going to be 56. Our next column is going to start at 57, and we're going to add 7 to that, and we're going to get 63. Our next column will start at 64, and we're going to add 7 to that, and we're going to get 71. Our last column, or second to last column, is going to start at 72. We're going to add 7 to that, and we're going to get 79. So notice that if we had gone by 6s, we're going to be just 1 short, but luckily we have 1 more column that's going to start at 80 and go up to 87 when we add 7 to it. So now that we've got our columns, we need to put our frequency up along the side, along the y-axis. So again, we're going to start at the bottom, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So now we need to fill in our columns. So we need to figure out how many numbers are between 49 and 56. So we're going to go 49, yes. 71, no. 80, no. 71, no. 67 no, 58 no, 65, 66, 70 no. We've got 59 no. We do have a 52. And those are the only two numbers that fall in that column, so we'll shade that column up to 2. Then we need to go to the next column, 57 to 63. So we're looking for 57 to 63. There's 1. There's 2. 57 to 63. There's another. 57 to 63. So that looks like it's going to be it for that one. So we have 3 of those. So we're going to shade our column up to 3. Again, the shading doesn't have to be perfect. Just need to know where it's going up to. Now we're looking for 64 to 71. So 64 to 71, there's 1 in our second row, 64 to 71, 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 and that's a lot of those. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so we're going to shade our column up to 6 for that one. Then we have 72 to 79, so we're going to look for numbers that are 72 to 79, so we've got 1 there, 1 there, so we've got 2 of those, so we're going to shade up to 2, and then we've got 80 to 87 as our last column, and we've got 180 here and 180 here, and notice that I put checks as I went along to make sure that I didn't forget any numbers when I went to make my graph. So now we've got our histogram, all of our data goes together, our intervals are even, and I've created my graph. Now let's have you try and create one on your own. So here we are at practice problem number 3. It says create a histogram to display the data of ages of children who visit a park, and the ages are over there on the right hand side. So you're going to try this one on your own. You're going to pause the video now and then press play again to see if you are right. How did you do? Does your graph look like mine? Hopefully it does. If not, go ahead and make sure that it looks like mine. Now, notice that we had a spread of 13 or a range of 13, so we had to divide by the number of columns, which was 7. We got 1.8, but we're not going to make intervals of 1.8, so we bumped it up to 2, and that gave us our equal intervals, and hopefully your bars match mine. That brings us to the end of this video. If you like this video, go ahead and throw us a thumbs up. If you love this video, go ahead and throw us a sub, and we will catch you in the next one.